What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Optimal presented by FTN Network. I'm your host, Kyle Murray at KMurrayDFS on Twitter. If you want to give me a follow, I do appreciate that. And I try to respond to as many DMs as I can, so feel free to interact with me there. But appreciate you all tuning in today on a Thursday. We're going to talk about some Thursday Night Football later today. We're going to talk about some NBA on the 3-game slate. We're going to talk about that. And we're also going to cover some of the recap from last night. Had a big night last night. Took down the $9 FanDuel contest for $10K. So that was a good little night for me there. So we're going to review my build from that. I'm going to take a look at some of my exposures and look at the final lineup that ended up winning. And then we're going to run through the slate a little bit, look at some of the top plays and look at, some of the optimal lineup and all that good stuff. And I'm actually curious to see how far off I was from the optimal lineup on FanDuel. I know I didn't have the best lineup because in the $5, I didn't play the $5. I only played the $9, but in the $5, I would have finished, I believe, fourth. So I know I didn't have the best lineup, but I'm curious to see what the optimal lineup was. Didn't have a guy like Anthony Edwards in the lineup, so I'm curious to see if he fell into the optimal there. But I did have someone like Nikhil Alexander-Walker who went absolutely nuts. I mean, I feel like Nikhil Alexander-Walker kind of owed me that one. I've been playing him so much with Brandon Ingram out, and he hasn't really came through, and now he finally did in a really big way. So appreciate that. But I appreciate you all for tuning in. I'm watching this on the Twitter machine as well. If you're watching over there and you want to throw some questions in there, I'm going to try to follow along down there. If you're watching on Twitch or YouTube, throw your comments or questions into the chat and I can pull them up to the screen. We can talk about that directly. So like I mentioned, NBA recap from last night, and then the Thursday Night Football and the 3-game slate look ahead for the NBA slate tonight. That's what we're going to do on today's show. Appreciate you all for tuning in. And if anybody here is a regular viewer, I really appreciate that. It means a lot to me. I love doing these shows, so I'm glad that people are, hopefully tuning in and enjoying it and learning some stuff each and every day. But let's run the intro, and then we'll be back talking about some of the stuff for today. All right.
Every day, DFS players set out in search of the perfect lineup.
Great Scott!
To help you craft the best lineup in the land, FTN's Kyle Murray is here to take you through one of the most powerful tools in the DFS world.
That's what I do. I drink and I know things.
It's The Optimal with Kyle Murray.
Well, I think the file got a little messed up there because that was not the right file that I was supposed to run, but I did click on the right thing. So that's not on me. And I don't have a producer behind the glass to blame them. So it is my fault. The file isn't correct. But I clicked the right button, I promise. But again, no producer behind the glass to blame. So that's all on me. Sorry about that. But I guess that was our intro for today. Just a little guitar riff there. But hopefully that sound all right and look all right. If anybody notices anything, please let me know. But that audio did not sound great. So let me know. But appreciate you all for tuning in. Like I mentioned here, if you have any questions or want to bring up anything about last night's slate or about tonight's slates, whether it's the NFL or the NBA, feel free to do so. We'll get to all those. I think it's going to be a pretty interesting showdown slate tonight. And also, we have some college basketball that starts at 6 p.m. Eastern time. So keep in mind, it's the earliest lock that we've had this year for that. And I've been playing that. I didn't play it yesterday, but the first day of the year I played it, had a pretty solid night. So I'm going back to the college basketball streets. So I highly suggest you do as well. The guys over at FTN Daily have been crushing college content over the course of the last year with football, and now they are going to keep doing so with basketball, it seems. So looking forward to that. But that's my plan for the night. Thursday Night Football, little 3-game NBA slate action, some college basketball. I mean, hard to beat that. Really hard to beat that, especially coming off of a solid night last night. Hopefully you all had a good night last night as well. All right, let's hop into the optimizer here. We're going to take a look at last night's slate. Let me get these backgrounds all set up. All right, here we go. We're going to look at FanDuel because FanDuel is where the takedown occurred. Now, typically I do DraftKings because I feel like most people, most people use DraftKings. Just the majority of users I think are on DraftKings. I like to play FanDuel. It's just, I don't know if I think it's the better site or not. I don't really get all caught up into that. I definitely think DraftKings has some advantages, but I've always been a FanDuel guy, no matter what. I will say this past year or so, I've been playing DraftKings a bit more, but FanDuel is where I first started. So I kind of always, I always go back to home, I guess is what you can say here. So we had the big 13-game slate last night, and I was hoping that some of my rules would still be in here from last night, but the combination rules and all that stuff got washed away with the refresh and in back test mode. So that's a bit of a bummer. But I'm going to run through some of the settings that I had for my builds last night, because I remember them pretty hard because they're pretty similar every single night. So as you can see, some of them haven't changed. Like tournament mode. Let me zoom in a little bit here, actually. All right, let me know if that's zoomed in enough. Go one more out. If that's not zoomed enough, I can go in a little bit more, but let me know. All right, so like I said, most of these settings are the same because I run very similar settings every night. I ran 150 lineups. My salary cap was, I left up to 500 on the table. And then, I was okay with using max salary. It was a massive slate. I wasn't too worried about that. I did force at least one player under 10%, which came in handy last night. You'll see the winning lineup. I only had one player under 10%. And that was it wasn't a very contrarian lineup, and it had some chalk pieces, but you'll see that it dodged the bad chalk that ended up missing, and it had one player under 10%. I think it had two players either under or around 15%, which is actually what I kind of consider low. Maybe not on a 13-game slate, but it was actually a pretty chalky lineup, honestly. Randomization I had at 25%. I did tournament mode, 3 unique players, and those are things that I usually do every single slate. Sometimes I'll bounce back and forth between 2 or 3 uniques, but last night I was at 3, and these are what my settings looked like last night. This is what and then projected ownership cap. I forgot that one. I believe it was. I don't remember what the projected ownership cap was. I don't recall that. I want to say it was like 260 or 250 or something like that. I'm not sure. But I'll try to remember that and figure that out. But I know the ownerships were a bit high last night with some of the situations for some players there. But it looks like some of the ownerships actually got taken away with the refresh as well. But the final fantasy points are still in there, and that's what counts right now. So these were my settings for the build. I want to say this was at like 250 or 260 or something like that. I think it was lower than that, actually. I don't know. I apologize. I thought I remembered it, but I didn't. I remember everything else, though. So we'll just leave that blank for now. But all right, let's see some top plays from the night. If you guys have any questions on some of the settings or some of the rules or how I, navigated the optimizer last night, let me know. I would love to answer all of those. So top plays for the night, and I'll break down if they were in the winning lineup that I had or not. Anthony Edwards, I didn't have Anthony Edwards. He was the highest scoring player of the night, and I didn't have him. He wasn't very popular, so it didn't really burn me. I was a little worried that someone with an Anthony Edwards lineup would catch me, but no one really had Anthony Edwards at the top. We saw a lot of Russell Westbrook lineups up at the top, but I had Russell Westbrook, so I was kind of safe there, obviously, with kind of having that blocked out. But didn't really have any Anthony Edwards teams around me, so that was kind of strange. It was like a 7,000 or 8,000 person contest, and just nobody at the top had the highest scoring player of the night. It was kind of strange. So maybe I lucked out a little bit there, but he just wasn't all that popular. But Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I did have in the main lineup. John Morant, I also had. John Morant, I wrote up in my article as one of my favorite plays on the night. So it was good to see him have a big game. De'Aaron Fox, I did not have. Luka, I didn't have him. I did have Joval. Also wrote him up. I wrote him up as my favorite FanDuel play on the entire slate. So again, good to see him have a big game. And obviously, he got even better as a play when Brandon Ingram was ruled out. But I liked him even before then. And after that, it's kind of a fall off before you find someone else that was in my lineup. Thad Young was in the lineup, which I didn't have a lot of Thad Young. And Jaren Jackson, he was also in the lineup. He was like 5% owned. These two were kind of keys to having the winning lineup, and I didn't have them in a lot of my lineups. So I did have a weird kind of build where one lineup just kind of rose to the top with a good combination. So maybe got a bit lucky there. But the core was John Morant, Valanciunas, Cade Cunningham. I think Ricky Rubio was up there. Let me double check here. Yeah, Cade Cunningham was up there in terms of my exposure. Ricky Rubio was up there. Nikhil Alexander-Walker was up there. Russell Westbrook was 25% or more for me. So like I did get somewhat lucky with the sense that these two guys found the right lineup with Thad Young and Jaren Jackson. Um, but when the core was where it was a lot of Will Barton, a lot of Jonas Valanciunas. We had a lot of John Morant and Ricky Rubio and Nikhil Alexander-Walker. So then just being able to have so many lineups with those guys, I honestly thought I was dead because I had a ton of Josh Hart. I had like 30% Josh Hart. So I thought I was dead. And so I got pretty lucky to be able to get to a point where we had this lineup with some of the core guys being there and being strong plays, and then just getting lucky with the not necessarily the core plays, but the guys that kind of were just in a good amount of lineups that performed well. Like Thad Young, I think I had Thaddeus Young in like 8% of my lineups, something like that, 8 or 9%. Jaren Jackson was in like 6% of my lineups. So I did get fairly lucky with those two guys being in that main lineup or in the winning lineup, but was good to see there. But overall, some of the other top scores, let's check out top point per dollar plays. We had a lot of chalk on the slate with some of these value plays. Jeff Green was fine, 18 points. He hit 6x. That's kind of what you want. But from a value guy who's that popular, you are hoping for more. JaVale McGee was the best value on the night, followed by Thad Young. PJ Dozier was so cheap to where he scored 16 points and he still hit 6x. So one thing I'll notice in my lineup is that I didn't have anybody over 10K, which, again, I had a lot of Kevin Durant, which that was another bust, right? I had a lot of Josh Hart and a lot of Kevin Durant, but, I was able to have some lineups that ignored some of the top end guys. Giannis was fine, but Jimmy Butler, Kevin Durant, Luka was good, but I didn't have him in this lineup. James Harden, Steph Curry, and then it just had Westbrook was the most expensive player in the lineup. And then after that, it had a lot of mid-tier guys. It didn't have anybody under, I think 4.6 was the cheapest. I think Thad Young was the cheapest play. Thad Young was the cheapest player. So it ignored some of that cheap chalk that I kind of got lucky with, and then it really hit on the mid-tier guys. So overall, I mean, I think the core was pretty solid, mainly with Barton, Joe Val, and John Morant. But with some of the guys that I really just busted on, like Josh Hart, Aaron Gordon, I even had a lot of Kevin Durant. So with those guys busting, I think that it made it a little bit tough to have a big night. So I do think that there was some luck involved there with the right combinations hitting. But when the core was as good as it was with guys like Rubio and Cade Cunningham and Nikhil Alexander-Walker and Barton and Joe Val, all around 30% exposure or more, it was just kind of, we were going to be able to hit on different combinations. So I think that's kind of where we excelled there. But couple of rules that I touched on last night that I did it on the show, actually. There was several rules where I touched on with like certain centers. Like if I had Jaren Jackson, I didn't want Steven Adams, or rules like that, where if I had Russell Westbrook, I don't think I built this rule on the stream, but I talked about it, where if you're using one star, it makes sense to limit the other star, right? So that happened with a lot of Harden and Durant lineups. That didn't really matter because they both didn't do that great. But with Westbrook and AD, I don't even know what AD finished at. He finished with 47, so he wasn't terrible either. But for the price, I mean, that wasn't a spot that was probably going to win you anything. And it really allowed me to get to more Westbrook on his own. And obviously he had the big ceiling game there. So, I think that was, a lot of the rules that I built while talking through them on the show yesterday really helped. So if you guys are interested in that, I don't remember all the rules off the top of my head, and I wish they saved in here, but they didn't. But if you want to go back and look at yesterday's, you can check that out on my Twitter page, and those will be all up there as I walk kind of through the slate, pretty in depth with the positional rules and all that stuff and the player rules. So hopefully those helped you guys out. We should be back on YouTube now. So we had the 1 day off of YouTube because we had a little bit of issues linking the account to StreamYard. But now that we're all set, it should be live back on YouTube. So you can get these all on YouTube. They are live and they're posted on YouTube. So every single episode I've ever done is on my Twitter page. And I know that can kind of get buried sometimes, but they're also on YouTube. And I think they even have a little playlist. So if you're interested in checking those out, feel free. And again, any questions or comments on how this kind of happened or how I was able to take this contest down, feel free to DM me on Discord, Twitter, or shoot a comment in here. We're going to look at my player pool. I just saved an Excel sheet and kind of made it happen that way, but let me see if I can pull it up right here. All right. So it should be on the screen now. Looking at, I probably got to zoom in, right? So we're taking a look at some of the players that I was most exposed to and just the main lineup here. Most nights when I'm done building my lineups, I have a thing in Excel that'll tell me who I'm most high on, and I'll compare them to ownership and stuff. So I basically just reworked this and made it look like my player pool, and then I added the lineup here. So this was the winning lineup. I had 212 total ownership. So I think that the number was probably 220 or something like that if I had to guess, because this probably was one of the chalkier lineups that I built. But with Ricky Rubio, Cade Cunningham, Will Barton, Jonas Valanciunas, I liked all those guys a lot. So it wasn't surprising to see them be popular and also be in a lot of my lineups. So when you look at my ownership in comparison to the field, I think that's kind of where you can tell I'm higher on people. Like, well, I had 58% Will Barton. He was 52% owned on a 13-game slate, and I still went over the field on Will Barton. So it was a lot. I had a lot of Will Barton. Jaren Jackson, I was about even on the field there. Thaddeus Young, I was actually underweight a little bit. Had 11% Thad Young. But that is a spot where it kind of worked out there. Jonas Valanciunas, 41%. John Morant, it says 17% here, but 29% here. So I think I actually had 29% John Morant. I think that's an error. So I had a lot of John Morant. Like I mentioned, he was definitely in my top 4 on FanDuel in the article yesterday. So this is kind of how the score shook out. I don't think it actually finished at 427. Yeah, it was 426.5. So this was the winning lineup right here. And like I mentioned, nobody under 4K, which there was a lot of players under 4K that people got to, like Jeff Green, who I had 30% of, JaMychal Green, who I had 48% of, which people might be thinking that's a little bit low, but this was on FanDuel. On DraftKings, I think that they were a little bit more viable to like have immense amounts of. I think on FanDuel, it wasn't really all that necessary to do, but yeah, this was the main lineup, and this was the player pool. If you have any questions on that, feel free to let me know. Hopefully you can see the Excel sheet. Right? I know it's kind of big and kind of wonky, but I wanted to pull this up because this was the best way that I could think of to review the player pool and the lineup. And then you can see, some of the players that didn't really do all that great that I had a lot of. Josh Hart, Aaron Gordon, Kevin Durant. I had a lot of Tyler Hero, which I don't even know what he finished with, but I mean, he got extremely lucky with no Jimmy Butler for most of the game. So I would assume he had a decent game, but I genuinely wasn't even looking at his score just because he wasn't really in many of the lineups. But he finished with 37 DraftKings points. So he had a pretty good night, 27 real points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists in 42 minutes. Jimmy Butler was just officially ruled out. So that's something to monitor. But so Hero was also pretty good. Alexander Walker was obviously fantastic, scored 60 points. Kyle Lowry was pretty good as well. And then Westbrook, 25% Westbrook, about 10% more than the field in this particular contest. So overall, it was a really good night. Best night that I've had in a while. It's been a pretty cold run of things lately, and it was the first big night, or the first takedown for me for NBA, and the first really solid takedown in NBA that wasn't preseason with the optimizer. So was really happy to get that going there. If you guys have any questions on that, feel free to shoot me a DM or on Discord or Twitter, or send a comment in here. But we're going to take a look at the optimal lineup now for last night. So we're going to stop sharing that. go back to the optimizer. All right. So the optimizer should be good. It should be up on your screen. All right. And let's check out the optimal lineup. So we're going to reset the settings here. All right, so the optimal lineup on FanDuel yesterday was Fox, Morant, Derrick Rose. Wow, Derrick Rose had 40. I didn't even realize that. Oh, and Kelly Oubre. Like so that's it is kind of strange that the lineup that won didn't have Derrick Rose, didn't have Kelly Oubre, didn't have Anthony Edwards, didn't have Frank Kaminsky, who absolutely went nuts as well. So like 489 was the optimal lineup. I would have been 60 points off of the optimal lineup. That is insane. That is actually very crazy. There's a lot of massive scores last night. Obviously, a 13-game slate, so that's kind of to be expected. But yeah, this is a big time score. Nobody had the score in any contest. I looked at the $5 clutch shot on FanDuel, and I think the winner had like 433 or something. Like just nobody was playing Kaminsky, nobody was playing Oubre, nobody was really playing Derrick Rose. Nobody was really playing Anthony Edwards either. Bam wasn't all that popular, but he absolutely went off as well. So it was a massive scoring slate. Obviously, everybody in this optimal lineup had 45 or more, and that is a big time scoring production there. So, all right, on to tonight's slate. We're going to take a look at the main slate. We'll go back to DraftKings for this one. So 3-game slate. No, I don't really love these stretches of basketball where we go 3-game, 13-game, 3-game. They're just not my favorite, even though the 13-game really panned out for me. But the 3 games I just don't really love. I would much rather have a 13-game slate than a 3-game slate. However, we do have some pretty solid games here, in my opinion. I think the Clippers and Heat game will be very good. I think the Jazz and the Pacers game could be good, but we're looking like we're getting some injury stuff for Indiana that I don't think will really be all that great. And then Sixers at Toronto. We have some news here. Jimmy Butler officially ruled out. Tobias Harris could potentially return tonight after he was placed in on the COVID list. So that's something to monitor. Obviously, that team has just been a walking value because of how short their rotation has been with all these guys that they've been missing. So make sure you're staying up to date with the news there. I do believe the optimizer is updated. Updated here. So make sure you're keeping in check with the news and with the projections because they are going to change a ton. The ownership is going to change a lot, and the projections are obviously going to change. I had Jimmy Butler ruled out already, but with Karis LeVert, I ruled Karis LeVert in and Tobias Harris in as well. So make sure you're staying up to date with the news there if you're using the projections, the optimizer here. It's very important to always be on top of that news for NBA. It's probably the most important thing. All right, so let's get into it. Top plays of the night based on projections. Paul George, Andre Drummond. The price is not slowing down. Andre Drummond. He's 9-1 on FanDuel, 8,600 on DraftKings. Still haven't projected for 44 points. The thing about Drummond is Tobias returning essentially has no effect on him. Maybe not no effect, but very little effect because Drummond's not going to go out and score 30 points anyway. He's going to rack up these massive fantasy games on 20-plus rebounds, 10 or 15 points, and then some stocks, which that's what he's been doing. So a guy coming in and let's say Tobias is going to score 25 points a game rather than, I don't know, Seth Curry, who's scoring 18 or whatever. Like, I don't even know if Seth Curry's going to play tonight either, but that is obviously not the biggest change, when you're talking about someone like Drummond who doesn't really need that sort of source of production to flourish here. Shout out to S-Guy for the comment. Vooch placed on the health and safety protocol list as well. Chicago's not on the slate tonight, so that I guess we're going to look forward to that news and that impact tomorrow when the Bulls play. I believe they play tomorrow. But shout out to you for that news. Appreciate that. Thanks for tuning in. But that is big news. Vooch out of that lineup is going to open up some things for some Bulls guys, so we'll be able to look at that tomorrow. But all right. Let's take a look at some of the other top plays here tonight. Bam Adebayo, Donovan Mitchell, Fred VanVleet, Rudy Gobert, Domantas Sabonis, Kyle Lowry, OG Anunoby, Malcolm Brogdon, Tyler Hero. With Jimmy Butler out, Tyler Hero and Kyle Lowry and Bam Adebayo all get massive boosts. I genuinely think that you can make a case for playing all three of these guys in the same lineup. I think Hero and Bam are two of the best plays. I mean, Bam's 7'4" over there. He's just such a slam dunk play in my opinion. And at the top, you can see a lot of value is in with Miami and Toronto. The top top 8 value plays, the top 9 value plays are either Toronto or Heat players. So obviously that's where a lot of the top point per dollar options are. Duncan should get a nice little uptick in not necessarily upside, but minutes and I guess stability with him getting some more shots up. His upside's always kind of the same because it just relies on him, getting really hot and hitting 9 or 10 threes, which is a lot, but that's what we've seen from Duncan in the past. But he's done that with Jimmy, so I don't really think that affects him a ton. I think it helps maybe the chances of him hitting that ceiling a bit higher, making those a bit higher. But overall, I don't think it makes him overall like just a better, like it's not going to turn him from just a 3-point shooter to like all of a sudden someone who's going to fill up the stat sheet in 3 different ways and find himself driving to the bucket. Like that's just not going to change anything for Duncan. He's still going to be the same kind of guy. Svi Mykhailiuk, I think, makes some sense as he is under 4K still. Have him projected for about 26 minutes. He's kind of similar to Duncan, where he's going to get a lot of his top performance from good shooting nights. Svi Mykhailiuk is a guy that I don't mind tonight. Bam Adebayo, Chris Boucher, Tyler Hero, Gary Trent, Precious Achiuwa, PJ Tucker. I almost said PJ Walker. Shout out to PJ Walker for the being in my head there, rent free. Kyle Lowry, Andre Drummond. So a lot, honestly, for a 3-game slate, a lot of really strong plays. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. Let's check out the optimal lineup right now based on the projections here, which may be giving away a little bit, but it's early in the day. I'm sure things will change. All right, current optimal lineup. Hero, Robinson, Gary Trent Jr., Bojan Bogdanovic, Andre Drummond, Kyle Lowry, Karis LeVert, who might not play tonight, so make sure you're checking in on that, and Bam Adebayo. A really good lineup. No Paul George in there, so we are looking for a more balanced build, but we still do have one player under 4K, Duncan Robinson there. So this is looking like my current optimal lineup right now based on my projections. Again, going to change a ton. We have a lot of news and a lot of stuff that we're still working on. So make sure you are checking back in on that. But 3-game slate, I think it is a good chance to try some off the wall things. Like I do think playing a game theory perspective is probably the best thing to do on a 3-game slate. I mean, for me, 2 days ago on the 3-game slate, obviously all the chalk and all the top plays were in the Milwaukee and Sixers game, and a lot of those guys panned out in a big way. Tyrese Maxey was huge. Niang was awesome. Like these are guys I didn't really have. But the thing is, if you go to that game and you miss, you're dead. Like, so if you go to, I don't know, let's say if you go to Toronto and you play Svi Mykhailiuk and he misses, it's really going to hurt if Svi ends up being popular. But now if you play someone in the Jazz or the Pacers game and they do well and they, maybe exceed expectations, they beat out some particular plays in the Sixers or Toronto game, you're going to have a good chance at, getting a leg up on the field there. Now, if you play someone in the Sixers or Toronto game, which I'm just expecting to be the most popular game right now, then you're probably, you're still playing good plays, but you're playing good plays that seems like everyone else is playing just because there's going to be so much concentrated ownership on a 3-game slate. So that's just kind of something that I like to think about there for the slate. And that's just something I'd recommend to keep in mind on. A lot of times people are going to all be on the same plays and all the plays are going to look pretty good on a 3-game slate. Or I guess I should say all the plays that everyone is kind of thinking of are going to look pretty good, and everyone's going to be on that. Like it's probably going to be tough for you to really sneak a really great play under somebody's nose. Like it's just a 3-game slate, so everyone's going to have interest in the top plays. And like even if you do find someone that you think is a good play that maybe is underowned, they're probably still going to be fairly popular just because the nature of a 3-game slate is there's just going to be more ownership everywhere. So going to the lowest owned game, which in my opinion will be the Pacers and Jazz game, could be interesting. Didn't really work out on a 3-game slate last time with the Jazz and Hawks game, but it was still something that I think is an interesting idea. If your goal is to be contrarian, that's the kind of goal that you're trying to accomplish there. I think picking the contrarian game and targeting that way is the best way to go. But all right, I'm going to. I I don't think the projections for the Showdown slate are uploaded yet. So I'm going to upload those. Kind of just going to stall here for a minute. And again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to shoot those in there. I'm trying to follow along on the Twitter chat and the YouTube chat, and Twitch chat will pull to the screen automatically. I can pull them up on the screen. So feel free to throw any questions or comments in there. I will try to follow along with those and bring those up. I'm working on uploading the projections for tonight's Showdown slate, and we're going to cover that as well. Again, I appreciate you guys for watching this. And if you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to throw a like on the video and subscribe. We're trying to push out some more content on the YouTube side of things for free for people who are looking just for free video content. And to do that, we really want to continue to grow our subscriber base. So we appreciate all the support that we get from you guys over on that front, and it helps allow us to push out more free content for you guys on YouTube. So really appreciate the support over there. I believe we're up over I think we're almost at 3,000 followers now, or subscribers, I should say, on YouTube. So we're going to get that number up as we continue on, and we're going to be able to push out more content as well. So appreciate you all for tuning in. All right. The NFL optimizer should be locked and loaded and ready to go for tonight. Let's take a look at it. I will say, typically, I haven't really had the best luck with showdowns, so therefore I haven't been the biggest fan of them. But I've been having a lot of fun with them lately. I think these shows really help because I get to kind of talk about it. Oh, Vucevic tests positive for COVID, out at least 10 days. Yikes. All right. But yeah, so I get to kind of talk about the slate a bit more, and then, figure out some of my favorite plays and kind of game theory things out with you guys live on the show. And I think that's made the showdown slate's more fun. And also I've been doing like just a couple lineups rather than trying to 150 them. And I'll do one lineup on one site and maybe MME on the other site. And it kind of helps with the entertainment perspective because I can MME on the one site and hope that it pans out rather than sweating every single play and watching every single, yard move me up and down, blah, blah, blah. And then on the other site with one lineup, it's just a good entertainment value. So if you guys are interested in trying to find some more entertainment value in the showdown sites, I would not recommend that. I wouldn't say you should do it, but I don't hate the idea. But all right, let's get into it. Lamar Jackson, top projected player by a landslide on this slate. No surprise. It's typically going to be the case when you have Lamar Jackson and then on the other team, really no good fantasy producers. So Lamar Jackson is going to be a very popular captain option. Let's see if Alex has his showdown ownership up yet. They're not up yet, but I'm sure they'll be up soon. And then once those are up, I'll put them into the optimizer and you guys can see those there. But I'm assuming Lamar is going to be the most popular captain play by a landslide. So that's kind of what I'm working off with right now. And honestly, I do think he is the best play. The only issue is he's, $2,000, he's almost $3,000 more than the next most expensive option, which is Hollywood Brown. Mark Andrews only being 8,800, I think is pretty interesting. If you're looking for someone to pair up with Lamar, but overall, top projected players go Lamar, Brissett, Hollywood Brown, Gaskin, Waddle, then Mark Andrews, and then Gesicki are the only players over double digits. Latavius Murray, I think, is going to be out again. So Devonte Freeman's going to have a solid role, but he's 6,600 now. You're not really getting a ton of value there. Let's see the top point per dollar plays here. Isaiah Ford, Kirk Merritt. I genuinely don't know who that is. Josh Oliver. I do know who Josh Oliver is. Patrick Laird. Patrick Laird making an appearance potentially. Salvin Ahmed, Albert Wilson, Adam Shaheen, Tyson Williams. Yeah, it's kind of an ugly slate. I'm not even going to lie to you guys. I think this is a very, very, very ugly showdown slate. But there's money to be made anyway. So if I had to, first lane, I think the best scenario is to play Lamar in the captain. I think it's going to be popular, but I don't see a logical way that he's not the top scorer. I just don't really see it myself. If you wanted to play on the merit that someone is like something just weird happens where he just doesn't do well, and maybe Freeman scores 3 touchdowns or something. That's always in play. But if you're talking one lineup, the ideal scenario, the optimal scenario, like that play on words there. But in the optimal scenario, the most likely outcome, Lamar is probably the top captain option by a landslide, in my opinion. So that is how I'm approaching the captain spot. After that, when you're looking for some plays that I think might be contrarian down the line a little bit, Mike Gesicki, I think, could be. He's a little bit expensive at 7,400. We kind of saw Pat Freiermuth, even though Pat Freiermuth on Monday night was a very good play. He didn't really get massive amounts of ownership because he was a tight end and he was sort of expensive. Maybe we get that same kind of deal with Gesicki. I'm interested to see where Devonte Freeman's ownership falls because he's a little bit expensive for someone like Devonte Freeman who really hasn't been that reliable, but he's shown kind of the ability to find the end zone here. So he's someone that I have my eye on. And then Rashad Bateman as well. Rashad Bateman's only 5,800. I think he's super interesting. Let me check his target stuff last week. I'm pretty sure he had a ton of targets, and I'm just curious to see how it shook out between him and Sammy Watkins. Sorry for the delay. You got to pull up the Excel sheet that's taking a very long time to load. All right, here. Got it up. I mean, I was watching that game live a little bit, and it seemed like Bateman was getting a ton of targets, especially while Hollywood Brown was kind of struggling. It did seem like Bateman was getting massive amounts of targets. All right, for Baltimore. Last week, in terms of targets, Marquise Brown, 29%, Mark Andrews, 24%, Rashad Bateman, 19.5%, Sammy Watkins, 0%. Did he not play last week? Oh, was he not healthy? I swore he was active. That's strange, but yeah, he didn't play. I don't know if he was. I thought he was healthy. Let's see. Oh, he didn't play last week at all. Oh, he was inactive. Whoops. Well, either way, I do think Rashad Bateman is kind of just going to be the number 2 here, just because he's been pretty good in his short time, and they drafted him in the first round for a reason. And I think that they're going to play some through wide receiver sets anyway. Like last week, even when we saw Watkins out, we saw, let's see here, Duvernay played 54% of snaps, Hollywood 76, and Bateman 65. So they're still playing. And then Prochet played 21%. So they're still playing a ton of wide receivers. And even Miles Boykin got in there for 7%. So I think we'll see plenty of work for Bateman, even if for some reason, which I don't really think would be the case, but if he does slide to the number 3 place in the depth chart, plus you're probably going to assume Watkins is going to be limited a little bit. He did practice fully this week, but Bateman I really like a lot. He's probably one of my favorite plays, and I think maybe the Sammy Watkins news could keep some ownership off of him. All right. Mark Andrews I also think is pretty interesting. Like I think an interesting idea could be, I guess it depends on where ownership falls, but let's say Hollywood Brown is the popular play. I think Marquise Brown could be just unowned because he's so expensive. And if that were the case, playing him and Lamar would be pretty interesting. But let's say Hollywood Brown gets all the ownership because he's been the best receiver for the Ravens so far this year. I think skipping him, going down to Andrews and Bateman, saving some money, I think makes some sense. Something that I think is going to be pretty interesting. But all right, let's see what the current optimal lineup is here. Got about 5-10 minutes left in the show here. And then I'm going to hop off, update the projections for NBA and NFL. So if you guys are subscribing or are subscribers to the projections into the site, those will be updated here shortly. If you're not a subscriber, you can get all my projections, all my content, all of everyone's content, our cheat sheet exposures and all that good stuff in the FTN Daily universe, I guess, the FTN universe. Promo code KMurray gets you 20% off. And I believe we have monthly We have monthly prices up for basketball, $60 a month, but you can get 20% off that. And then we have not necessarily prorated numbers, but cheaper numbers for NFL now that we are a few weeks into the season. So if you are still looking to join for NFL, you should get on that and do so now with that promo code KMUR to get yourself 20% off. But all right, current optimal lineup here. Lamar Jackson, Salvin Ahmed. I didn't realize he was projecting that line 800. I think he's going to be one of the more popular value plays. And if he's not, then for me. But Gesicki's in there, Andrews is in there, and Jalen Waddle. So I actually think that's actually a pretty solid lineup. Obviously, I think that could potentially be a very popular lineup now that that's kind of what the projections are showing. But hey, you can maybe drop down from one of Waddle or Gesicki, play Rashad Bateman, take Andrews, go up to Hollywood Brown, call it a day in terms of being a little bit contrarian. So, yeah, I actually think Salvin Ahmed's going to open up some salary. So that actually, like, when you have a slate where there's so much top-heavy talent, like, all the good plays are Lamar, Hollywood Brown, and then, like, guys above 8K, right? But then there's no value. Those slates are kind of tough for me, right? So I think having Ahmed makes the slate a lot better. So that's pretty interesting. But that's going to wrap it up for the show. If you guys have any questions on anything optimizer related or DFS related, feel free to DM me on Discord or on Twitter. I know I say that a lot, but just want to get that out so that way you guys know. I'm looking forward to those, but appreciate you all for tuning in. We will be back tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday. Tomorrow we're doing lineup building and the projected popular plays segment. We're going to look at all the top popular plays in terms of the ownership projections, which are live on the site now for this week. So if you're interested in checking those out, getting a head start on those, you can head over to FTN Daily and check those out. But we're going to do that on the show tomorrow. Lineup building, projected popular plays. Maybe we'll sneak in an NBA first look. But appreciate you all for tuning in. Appreciate all the support and the pretty much just tuning into the show as much as you guys can. It means a lot. And hopefully we can get the comment section bumping as much as possible so that way we can keep this show as like a conversation between the chat and all that stuff. I really enjoy that. And thanks to everyone who sent a message yesterday after last night. Really means a lot. Appreciate it. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Good luck, everybody. See you later.